Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. If it matters to you, we have got it covered. To cap off an extensive coverage that we've done as far as the sectoral analysis of the budget, tonight we're coming to you live with some of India's biggest experts, decoding the finance minister's announcements and whether it is indeed a well-rounded budget intended to bring health back into the economy and particularly for SMEs. Let me then welcome our guests onto the show tonight, two experts who don't need much introduction. First up, Niranjan Hiranandani, he's the immediate past president, ASSOCHAM. He's also, of course, MD Hiranandani Group. I also want to welcome Vineet Agarwal, president of ASSOCHAM, MD of TCI. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time here today. I can't think of two better experts to decode really the benefit for India's small businesses. And let me start right there and talk about the biggest headline or the takeaway as you see it from the announcement this morning. Let me come to you first, Mr. Hiranandani. What for you was the headline?
I think the fact that brought in huge amount of investment into many sectors and the volume of it was very large. Second, it talked about a 5-year construct. So, everything has been a long-term kind of visualization which was there. Normally, you talk about a 1-year story and then you wait for the budget in the second year to see whether that thing is going to be carried forth. I think the idea of visioning 5-year programs in each of the segments, I think, was a very good idea and something quite different that we have not seen in the earlier budget, except in very small parts. So I think the headline really is the big investment. Now, when big investments are to be done from the government sectors, we normally expect that there's going to be another tax effort. So we were very happy to see that there was no increase in taxes proportionate to the fact that the investment is increased, but they were ready to look at disinvestment and also take borrowings into the market and increase the deficit per se. So I think a combination of an increase in terms of investments into infrastructure, into health, into education, though, of course, there's an issue of how much and whether it was enough in each of the sectors is a question we will, I guess, discuss further, Sunanda. But I think the good part was the balancing of the two without bringing in some kind of a COVID tax, which was something I was a little worried about, that they would increase the expenditure but then bring in higher taxation rate. They managed, the finance minister managed to balance the budget pretty good, much better than I had expected.
Fair enough. So on that optimistic note, I want to give Vineet the opportunity to give us his opening comments as well. Vineet?
Thank you, Sunanda. I think just about 10 months ago, we were talking about different things. We were talking about essentials and non-essentials and how the budget, or rather whatever the measures are, how can we really save people and save lives? And I think now we've clearly moved to the saving livelihoods and we've gone beyond that. I think this budget has reorganized priorities for the government and for the nation as a whole. There is, of course, the massive investment plan into infrastructure. There is a consistency of thought in terms of policies, in terms of not increasing taxes. So that gives a lot of investor confidence, the confidence that for domestic or foreign investors that we can invest for the future of this country, long-term future of the country. And these correlate very well into then attracting capital, whether it is domestic again or international, and even bringing global value chains to the country. So a very, very positive and progressive budget from a long-term perspective for the country.
We'll discuss each of those points over the course of the next 30 minutes. But the one thing that I think we should be discussing right on top, of course, is the ARC for NPAs. Mr. Hiranandani, every time you and I have spoken, we have spoken about liquidity coming back into the system, particularly for small businesses. It seems like this is definitely a booster shot for as far as liquidity is concerned. The bank nifty, in fact, ending up nearly 8.5% or so higher. Are you confident that this is going to be what is required to bring health back into the lending system as far as liquidity goes?
So, Nanda, execution is always a question mark when the government takes up these issues. But I think they do mean business, and I'm sure it will happen. The question is, how are they going to go about it? How quickly will this actually implement? And if they bring about a bad bank and an ARC equivalent type of business, I think it should be done quickly and fast in order to put the banks back. But the other part of the story is also what I like, and which is actually saying that two of the banks could possibly be privatized. And I think that was a lovely story too, which indicates very clearly that the consolidation of banks may ultimately mean that some of them may be privatized over a period of time. And I think that's a good signal that we have to do. Plus, we have an infrastructure development bank. Now, we've been begging of this for the last couple of years. ASSOCHAM has been taking a lead, so has the other associations talking about it. Today, the problem is that the banks which are there today, even large banks like State Bank of India, have actually short-term deposits and lend long. And because of that reason, we are not able to get large infrastructure projects off the ground because they don't have adequate debt funding within the economic system, and we don't have too many people to go to for such funds. Now, this is going to be, I think, a story which is wonderful, and where I think the contribution of the government is going to be tremendous. So I believe that an ARC type of bad bank that is being created, infrastructure bank that is going to be done, but I think it should be done fast in order to put these banks back onto track and take new responsibility measures for the future so that positive decision making can be taken in the PSU bank, which is not really happening. The other angle of it, which you mentioned about MSMEs in your introduction speech, we have a major problem there. About half, we have, Vineet now leads ASSOCHAM with 4.5 lakh members under the MSME scene. We do believe that more than half of them, 2 lakh plus members, still not getting adequate credit from the banking system. That is a very big challenge because when you're talking about sectors, most of the time we are talking, even on our channels, about the formal sectors, automobiles, steel, cement, and all these sectors, aluminium, and so on and so forth. What about the small MSMEs and those actors which are there? They are still struggling. And many of them are still not into the business. Some of them are dealing with hotels. They're dealing with tourism, all these sectors of it. They're even talking about media. There is so much pain even in that sector of the media. So if you look at all these sectors put together, I don't think there is adequate credit system which is actually going into the economy. And I think that needs to be pushed much more than it is being doing. But I would not say that nothing is happening. That would be unfair. And it would not be true. So a lot has happened in the last 6 months, but a lot more needs to be done.
NPA spike, in fact, as of mid of 2020, coming in at almost 12.8% versus 11.4% Y&Y. Hopefully, some of those issues could see a resolution. Vineet, what's your opinion?
Yes, RBI also said that, they're expecting 14.8% NPAs as a target, as an estimate. But I think other than that, the IBC process is also stalled right now. It's deferred till the end of the financial year. So NCLT is also not active. So I think a lot of these things will start coming up post, in the new fiscal, which means that capacity building at NCLT courts, the IBC process being revitalized, all of this is very critical because NPAs are going to happen. But more importantly, the companies and the enterprises that can survive and live, we have to give them that support and we have to make them viable. If they are viable, then they will live as well. So clearly the importance of the IBC or the NPAs that are coming through is very important now. And this will be another step that the government will possibly need to take perhaps later in the fiscal to understand how this is panning out.
Okay. We have to take a quick break. Just before we go to that, very briefly, Mr. Hiranandani, commentary on REITs also coming in. What's your quick takeaway on that?
It's very positive. We've already had 2 large REITs which have come in the last 2 years. In fact, even COVID times, the Raja Group brought in a REIT which was quite oversubscribed 13 times. So I think the REIT segment is very positive. This, along with InvITs, we could probably raise at least 50,000 crores more in the next 1 year in the InvITs and the REIT segment. So the benefit which is now being given in terms of non-deductibility of tax at source, I think would be going a long way in terms of actually encouraging more investments to come into the REITs InvITs markets. So very positive story in terms of it. I think this is something which they have been able to discuss with foreign investors and made clear as to what are the issues which are pending in order to bring more investment into this sector. I think similar action should be taken in the power infrastructure sector, but probably we could ask that separately.
Sure. All right, let me take a quick break then. On that note, we'll come back, discuss much more, particularly what the signal now is looking like as far as consumer sentiment, as far as investor sentiment is concerned for the global markets. Back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on this live coverage on Leaders of Tomorrow's Budget Edition. I'm in conversation with Niranjan Hiranandani and Vineet Agarwal, really dissecting the Finance Minister's announcements earlier this morning. Just before we slipped into break, we were talking about the signal really that REITs is giving as far as investors are concerned. I do want to make a quick mention of the commentary on insurance. FDI being hiked from 49 to 74%. My question to you, gentlemen, maybe I could come to you first on this, Vineet. As far as India now as an investment destination for global investors is concerned, we've heard from the IMF saying that they're confident India will become the fastest growing major economy for next year. Do you think all of this is really boding well for India, for India's economy, for the macro picture?
Certainly. I think, the numbers in terms of GDP growth, etc., will only happen if and when the investors are seeing that things are happening on the ground. The progressive budget that has come out today, leading towards a consistency in terms of the tax framework, consistency in terms of policies, coming out with the PLI scheme, the reforms that are planned in the labor sector, land-related reforms that are being thought of, and of course logistics. So how can logistics costs come down? The national logistics policy is being developed. So all of this means that the ease of doing business is substantially improving. And that really is very, very attractive to any investor. I mean, not just foreign investors, but even domestic investors, because the potential for the country is massive that we can use. Okay. From just creating demand internally as well as using it as a base for exports as well. So the Atmanirbhar Bharat plan is very, very, I think, straightforward in guiding us in terms of this intent.
Okay, so speaking of intent, I do want to talk infrastructure. It was raised just before we slipped into break, 1.18 lakh crores for highways. That's a nearly 28% jump. In fact, Minister Nitin Gadkari saying this is the first time so much importance is being laid on infrastructure in the budget. Specifically for small businesses, commentary on infrastructure, commentary as far as PLI is concerned, the fine print for MSMEs who are asking for the capital slabs for PLI not really being lowered. At least that's not there in the fine print. But in terms of signaling the seriousness for small businesses, the seriousness of really bringing jobs back, are you satisfied with what you've heard today? Mr. Hiranandani, first you. Vineet, I could come to you after that.
I think intent is good, Sunanda. I think I cannot deprive the government of the privilege of saying that the intent is there. Even if you talk about the interim discussions that we had with the finance minister on various occasions when we had interim meetings where she had announced interim policies on it, MSMEs were always her favorite. So I cannot say that her intent has been wrong in the MSME sector. And in fact, a lot of good has already happened. But the pain is still there. That is the problem. So what we are asking for is not the issue that what she has not done or what has happened. It's the thing that she has to continue to give more because that sector is still in pain. And that's the issue. And that is the challenge that we are feeling. That's one. And second, take the other sectors where nothing has happened. Whether you take the hospitality sector, whether you look at media, whether you look at part of the construction sector, all these sectors have been going through pain and they continue to do so. So they needed an extra push. And that is the small lacuna which remain. So while a lot of good has come into the budget, some of these sectors probably needed a little more to be done in order to pull them out of the kind of bad position they are in today. That's the challenge. So I cannot criticize the budget for the purposes of what they have done. But I have to say that probably the amounts which we are talking about for MSMEs, for hospitality, for media, I have not seen something for the media and other segments that need to be supported in this downturn which has taken place. So we are there. See, they have done huge amount of other things. Even in the energy sector, huge amount of work is proposed and being done and has been visualized both in terms of DISCOM, in terms of division of these DISCOMs from the main suppliers, GAIL, the pipeline and other things. So huge amount of work is happening. But there are painful sectors which may need some additional benefit, but maybe Finance Minister can address it separately as she did in the last 1 year.
Fair enough. Vineet, just before I come to you, someone who's very closely embedded in the infrastructure space in the country joining us at this point, KK Mohanty, thanks for taking the time. Just before you joined us, we were discussing the outlay as far as infrastructure is concerned, sir, and discussing whether this is what is really required, one, to bring back sentiment, two, to bring back jobs, and to really bring back demand into the country. Perhaps for the first time, we're seeing such a huge outlay as far as infrastructure is concerned. I want to get your thoughts. KK Mohanty.
Thank you so much for inviting me. At the outset, it's very heartening to see that the focus of the government has really primarily on the infrastructure in this budget, besides some few other long-lasting, far-fetching reforms. But if you look at the grassroots level today, there is some disconnect at the top when we talk about the macro levels. Naturally, the MSME, the hospitality sector, it is languishing, and there is a huge amount of unemployment. Might be infrastructure, the biggest takeaway will be with the larger spending in infrastructure, might be this will partially be addressed as far as employment is concerned. If you today see the rural area, the migrant laborers have come back to the rural area. The hospitality sector, which engages a large number of people are without job. The restaurants, the hotels, the travel agencies, all are out of job today. So might be infrastructure will create some amount of job, but at the same time, these infrastructure projects are done spending is in the at the large ticket size. We need to see at the grassroots level how this is percolating and addressing the issues at a faster pace. Today, when we talk about the macro level and a lot of the stock market, suppose doing so well in last 6 months, you feel where there is some disconnect. At the grassroots level, you don't see anything happening or anything value creation or the valuation of companies are going up at this type of situation. But as far as lot of investment or liquidity available in the market and there is no outlet to deploy them, That might be one of the reasons for which stock market have done. So this, we need to be conscious about this and understand and address the issues at the grassroots level as far as the employment is concerned. Then the lower level productivity, how it will be incentivized. Third thing is how the MSMEs today, for example, a MSME, if you go to, I'm basically work in Bombay and I am from Bhubaneswar in Odisha. If you go to the industrial sector in MSME where the clusters are there almost 99% of the industries are languishing. What has been done for them? How they will survive this battle? So we need to really see in a long-term basis how these things is going to be addressed. Just addressing the issues at the macro level or the macro numbers may not be exactly reflecting the true situation at the present juncture.
Okay, I just very briefly want to give you 30 seconds also, Mr. Mohanty, to respond. We were discussing liquidity issues for MSMEs on the whole, specifically for the infrastructure space. Would you perhaps like to see more as far as, infrastructure development, a financial institute, a fund, etc., looking specifically at the infrastructure space very briefly?
The idea of a development bank for infrastructure is very heartening here. I think the experts have missed out that. I think that was the need of the hour, because the infrastructure, the BOTs today country is not picking up because there is no long-term funding available, and the structure, the delivery system has been so complex that all the cases has got into litigations, and the sovereign contracts are not being honored. And that's why investors have created a huge amount of apprehension in investing in that sector. So the infrastructure development bank will be an extremely good step in this direction. But liquidity available in the market, today we have to see how it can be productively invested into the respective areas, so that the basic issues of MSME, the unemployment, we are missing out one factor in this whole pandemic situation, that has been there is a permanent change of attitude of people. People are looking today inward, not looking too much outward. For example, today I don't think for next 1 to 2 years or 3 years, people will even look at going out for eating. So these are the things which need to be considered when you have to look at the especially hospitality sector, MSMEs, and the grassroots level where employments are not available. So we need to really address it in a very, very scientific way.
Okay. As and a bringing country, really demand back. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. I completely agree, sir. We've run out of time, unfortunately, on tonight's panel, but I do want to give the three of you the opportunity to rate perhaps today's budgetary announcement. Vineet, if I can come to you first, on a scale of 1 to 10, how highly or otherwise would you want to rate today's budget?
I'm usually not giving high numbers in the past, but I think this time around 8.5 to 9 is what I would possibly give the budget. The only reason why I would not give a full 10 on 10 is because of execution risk. I think in the past, many projects have been announced, many things have been announced in the budget, but the execution has not happened. So I would like to see a greater framework, a right framework for execution for all the things that have been announced today, and hence an 8.5.
Okay, 8.5. Mr. Hiranandani?
I would go for 8. I think dil mange more. Most of the things, there are lots of issues for each, especially segmentation-wise. If you take up individual industry and see the kind of issues which are still languishing, they are not being addressed. In fact, what she has done very effectively is to take the macro issues, pick up and push certain industries and try to see that the top-down effect should work in each and every industry. But different industries have different pain and may require some personal attention or focused attention to those industries, just like what Mr. Mohanty mentioned about the restaurants or this hospitality, which I mentioned about media and construction. So I think all these required to be addressed, and that's why 8 out of 10.
Okay. Mr. Mohanty?
I will give it a 6.5 to 7, majorly because this is missing the connect at the grassroots level. While at the global level or at the macro level, the budget looks attractive, but it is missing the connect the country facing the challenges at the grassroots level in the unemployment sector, in MSME sector, in agriculture sector, and between the hospitality sector. The biggest why I am giving 6.57 is positively for the infrastructure outlay and especially the special steps taken on the health care side. These are the two positive takeaways, but the biggest missing link is it is missing out to connect with the challenges and problems at the grassroots level. Especially the common people today will be suffering a lot.
Fair enough. Okay, so mixed, if I can call it that, really, the reaction to the budgetary announcement today by the finance minister. Implementation, of course, is something that is going to continue being watched. Niranjan Hiranandani, Vineet Agarwal, KK Mohandi, thank you so much for your time here on this budget edition special on Leaders of Tomorrow. Completely out of time. Thanks for watching.